Have you ever wondered why high performers effortlessly connect with their customers? What's the reason behind it?
High performers excel at forming genuine relationships and adapting to changing situations. What is their hidden trait? Stay tuned as we reveal the secret to power play number 2.
Welcome back, everybody, to Secret to Medical Device Sales with Annalisa and Cynthia, your girls of grit, aka Lisa and Cindy. How are you, Lisa? How's your weekend been?
I'm good. It's been awesome. Oh my gosh, Cindy, my dad came to town and I have not seen him in so long. And it was so nice to have him. And he was so self-sufficient, Cindy. My dad's retired. I think I've talked about this with you guys. He's a retired orthopedic surgeon. I don't know, 50 years, I think. I don't know, long time. Anyhow, he's such a fun guy. He's such a little tinkerer. He was an engineer before he was a physician. So kind of cool, but he's so self-sufficient. Like he has a consulting business that he works for. And so he works I don't know, not every day, but for both the days that he was here during the week, he worked 9 to 1. So it was like,
What?
yeah, he was great. I worked, he worked. It was great. It was like no time lost, And then he comes down. He's like, okay, Lise, what we got going on? He picked up Brooklyn from school, had no idea where to go to get her. He just went out there. I'm like, dude, this is great. Thanks, Dad. It's like having a built-in nanny. It was really nice. But it was great to see him. And we took him to church yesterday and he loved it. And anyhow, it was a really nice weekend.
That sounds like an awesome weekend. And I think we all strive to be active when we're older. And
I know.
Sounds like, is mind clear and
Yes.
just to have that physicality. Oh my gosh, that reminds me, physicality. So this is hilarious. So even though I live in Virginia, I did grow up in New Jersey and I've been around snow my whole life. Then with the climate changing as global warming hits, I feel like we don't get as much snow anyway. Well, finally in Virginia this last week, we actually had 2 snows, first time in like 3 years. Well, I think I did one of those scare away the snow because about 3.5 years ago, it was in the summer and I went into Costco and there was a snowblower for sale. And I was like,
oh, that's super cool.
Snowblower. I'm like, I think I need to buy a snowblower. All these years, I never had a snowblower. So for any of you listening in Chicago, Minnesota, wherever you are, cold, Canada, I get it now why you have snowblowers. So finally it snows. Now, granted, it wasn't that much. It was like 3 inches of powder, but we just wanted to try
That's
it.
so fun.
Holy moly. It saves your back. It's the easiest thing ever. It's so fast.
Oh my
I was
God.
like, this has been my whole life. So yes, you had great family. I had the discovery of a snowblower.
I love that. I want a snowblower. I live in Florida.
It is so cool. I'm going to have to send you a
Maybe
picture.
one day.
It's hilarious. I even videoed it. Anyway, it's the little things that
That's
make
so
us happy.
fun.
But I'm so excited to dive into our episode today.
Yes.
You are coming back to Power Play number 2. If you remember, Lisa and I talked about doing a 10-part series. And the reason it's 10 is because there are 10 characteristics that we believe are essential in becoming a high performer. So each week we're going to release these 10 jam-packed, really fun episodes that really focus on one thing. And that's how we came up with Power Play. Again, that's when you have an advantage and when you focus on like 2 good minutes of when that's it, head down and go. So what does it take to be prepared and be ready for a Power Play?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think we all want to be high performers every day. I think even high performers probably at some points struggle a little bit, right? They're not winning every day. I mean, it's not like you're going out there, I'm a high performer, you're a high performer. We still have bad days. We still have days where we're like, oh. So it's like, these are really good things to remind yourself to always be aware of. And it really keeps you on your toes and you're just shooting for the stars. So today's Power Play number 2 is all on emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, which it's the same thing, right? It's either EQ or EI. These are like the new words. As my husband's like, I don't know, I've never heard this word till like 2024. I'm like, honey, it's been around forever. but
now we label it.
Now we're labeling it. Yeah, exactly. But this is one that, you know what? It's really funny, you guys. So as Cindy and I were discussing this topic about EI, we're like, gosh, it's kind of hard to talk about. Like, how do you actually talk about EI? It's like a feeling, it's like a thing, right? But it is an actual action. You actually have to do it. And sometimes if you're not good at it, you got to really think about it. You got to actually tell yourself, I need to have a higher EQ or EI. I need to learn more about it. And why? Because they talk about EI as being one of the great traits of great leaders. Great leaders are able to do this so well. And there's a secret to it as well.
Yes. And you know what's so interesting when you said that about great leaders? If you do research and Google some of these really top people, You will always find something about EI and EQ. You're so right, Lisa. It's abstract. It's like you can't see it. We have episodes on setting goals. Okay, we can see that. We can write that out. EQ and EI, you can't. But if you incorporate into things you can see, it's like a superpower. So
Yeah.
I'll just define it first and then we'll give away our secret. So the definition of emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions as well as the emotions of others. It's just one of those, like I said, abstract things.
Yeah. We're going to help you guys try and wrap your arms around it today, because it is kind of hard to understand. But I really think that once you start thinking about it, it's actually not hard to do. And the reason why is within the secret. So
Yes.
the secret to emotional intelligence is connection. Connection. It's connecting with yourself and it's connecting with others. And so how do you do that? And that sounds really easy, right? You're like, oh, well, I just talk with somebody. I can tell them stories and they're going to hear me and we're going to connect. But sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes it's harder, right? Because not everybody wants to connect. I mean, I don't know about you, Cindy, but I have those customers and I mean, customers across the board, right? Physicians, nurses, VPs, CEOs, yes. They're not looking to connect, you guys. They're looking to push you away. They want you to go bye-bye because you're bothering them and you are on their time schedule and they don't have time for you. So today, how are you going to connect or have that high EI with those customers that don't want to have that EI and connection with you? So we're going to talk about that today. And I think that's really important, especially if you want to be a high performer, because when you master emotional intelligence and you have a high EI or EQ, man, I mean, again, sky's the limit. It's amazing how much better you do at sales when your EI is high.
And another word came to mind to kind of like summarize everything, and that's the interpersonal skills. I think that's another good way when we talk about strong communication and interpersonal skills, but then how does this connect in your sales performance? So, I kind of gave that example last week, how in Power Play number 1, when I talked about this long sale that took me over 3 years where I just kept coming back as a work ethic example. But I got to tell you, as you were talking, like 2 different examples popped back in my mind that I remember along that journey is meeting those people, how reading their cues and reading their body language and knowing how they like cold as ice at first. I don't want to talk to you. I didn't like the previous rep. And then how you just kind of chip away until you get to the point where if you're able to carefully navigate it in a way that you can move a sale, that was communicating in ways that you try things. You try, maybe it's email, text messages, phone call, lunches, dinners. You just kind of get a taste. You get a taste for what works for them and how they receive your communication. So it's paying attention to how they respond to different types of communication.
I love that. You just brought to mind something. It's like squirrel moment, but
I love your squirrel.
I was telling my dad the other day when he was with me about something that my daughter does really well. And I feel like this could actually be like a good EI moment. My daughter will find when she meets someone, anybody, it could be the lady behind the gas station desk when we're buying a lottery ticket, which I don't do often, or at a restaurant or at a doctor's office or just in passing by. She will pick up on something that the person has or is wearing or is like their nails, for example. She will pick up on something and be like, I love your nail polish, or your outfit is so cute, or oh my gosh, those are such pretty earrings. And I'm like, wow, that's really good, Brooke. Legit, the person replies, no, oh my gosh, thank you, sweetheart, honey. What would you like? Let me open the door for you and give you a lollipop. It's so funny because the EI isn't actually that easy, but sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it's as simple as paying attention, like you said, to something and pointing out something. That lady may have taken 2 hours on her nails and she's really proud of them. And so when you commented on them, she's like, oh, wow, thank you. Thank you, Cindy or Lisa. What can I do for you today? The ladies behind the OR desk. Those ladies see all sorts of crap. They get all sorts of crap. You come in with a bucket of candy or a sweet smile on your face and you're complimentary. Just that simple connection can get you the information you're looking for, because maybe you're trying to find out who's working today, what's on the board, and you can't just stand there and look at the OR board.
There was a lot you just said in that conversation with a 10-year-old. So number 1, very observant. So I think that that's key in sales, right? You have to be observant. Number 2, she was genuine. she's innocent. She's 10. She's just commenting on something she sees. Number three, nobody really remembers everything you say. It's how you make them feel. So whether
Oh,
it's a
so
lady
true.
at the gas station
So
or
true.
a customer, she made her feel good because she was like, oh, I like your nails. And look at the response that she got.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that simple beginning of awareness. And then again, you never know, your daughter may have a future in being a CIA agent as she observes everything. And this would be great. But I think that's great. I think that you're exactly right, though. That is a tip of EI. She's paying attention, she's aware. And I actually, that's a very sweet story. You should be
Oh,
proud of
thank
your
you.
little
I
girl.
am. I turned to my dad. I was like, see, she's going to be an awesome salesperson.
Exactly. You have to pay attention to things. You got to be aware of everything around you.
You do. So quickly, let's talk about the key components of EI or EQ. So
Mhm.
we're talking about them now, but they really are like self-awareness. So you need to be aware of yourself, how you're carrying yourself and what you're doing and how you're reacting to things. And that goes along with self-regulation, right? So you got to work on reacting to situations, especially tough situations. And I'll put my hand up. I'm not always the best at that. I do lose my cool a lot. Empathy, you have to be empathetic with people. And what
Okay,
does
so
that look like?
yeah, I think we need to expand on this one
Sure. Yeah.
because I think empathy is skipped over at times. So I think this is actually a really good example. I was actually just watching the news when they were reporting sadly about the California wildfires. So
Yeah.
just let everybody know they are in our thoughts and prayers. And I know it's just been
100%.
devastating to
Yeah.
watch. And I paid a lot of attention with this. My husband's a firefighter and just understanding how these fires have spread and the
Oh,
devastation's been awful. Well, one of the reporters talked about he's from that area. And one thing he said was, all these years I've been reporting on disasters. I've been reporting on all different places. He said, but now when I'm in my hometown, I understand the difference. For all these years I've reported with sympathy, I now have empathy. And I
wow.
thought that was a really good example about what it's like when you actually feel because you can relate that it's happened to you. So, not all of us have the advantage to be empathetic because we maybe haven't been in their shoes, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you start with sympathy, you can take a minute instead of just saying, oh, I feel bad for them. It's a moment of putting yourself in their shoes. And I think empathy just gives a deeper feeling. And when you're truly empathetic to the pain somebody's feeling, to what they're going through, it literally changes the inflection in your voice, the approach that you take. And honestly, that person that you're speaking to has a better reception of the conversation that you are giving out. So empathy is extremely, extremely important. And it's not always something that you can make yourself be. But I think when you're genuine and in the moment, empathy will happen for those that have a really high EI or EQ.
That's a great example. And yes, it's been devastating to watch. But you really brought up a good point because he was able to pull in on a different emotion. And when you pull in on something that really connects you with somebody else or a situation, now you're sharing something together. And so, what does empathy look like with your customers? It depends on who you're talking about. It could be
Hmm.
something as simple as you're talking about a patient, and you may have a family member that has had that in your family. And so you're able to feel that. It could be a situation where you're talking with a nurse or a PA or your physician, and they're telling you about their kids or their day yesterday or something like that. And you feel that because you have had that yourself. Whatever it is, it's being in tune with what they're telling you. It's not just like breezing over it. I always say
Hmm.
this, you're not going to talk at them, you're talking with them. You're connecting with them. Don't try and talk at your customers because they're not going to hear you. When you talk with them, like that guy did on the news, you were feeling him and he was letting you know his feelings about something. And so you immediately were pulled in to listen to him.
I think
So,
another great example of empathy in the workplace is when think about on the medical device side, okay, and think about those days where your calendar all of a sudden gets slammed and you're like, how am I going to be pulled in three different places? I'm trying to get help. I'm trying to get people. Every one of us has had those days where you're spread thin, you're so stressed out, you may or may not get where you need to get to. Think about it on your customer side. If you are somebody that works in the OR, think about the day you walk in the OR and the charge nurse is pulling her hair out because three people called out. Now they've got a traveler. There's nobody else here. And you just feel his or her stress. And it's that empathy of like, oh my God, I've been there. Even though it's
yeah.
a different situation, it's the same situation. But your empathy can be, what can I do to help? how can I make this easier? Can I grab something for you? And then you kind of work together, but being empathetic, realizing that that person is stressed out. This is a tough thing at work. And then maybe you help them. Then afterwards, they remember that. They
Yeah,
remember when you've been
you're
there.
right.
And then maybe that person is a really important part of getting your product to move forward and move forward in the sale. And then having that empathy along the way can really make a big difference.
Great point. That's 100%. That absolutely happens all the time. I've had many experiences where I've interacted with hospital employees or physicians on a totally different level, right? Has nothing to do with my product or anything. And we've shared either something that's happened or just a circumstance. And then 2, 3 weeks down the line, they're calling you to say, hey, your product's been approved, or hey, I'm going to help you push forward this product. Or the person on the VAC committee is like, wow, I remember her. She did XYZ for me. So absolutely, all of this ties into sales performance and hitting those sales goals. And something that I think is really interesting, Cindy, and I've said this before, is I truly believe, and this is in the data that we constantly are looking up, is women naturally can excel in being more empathetic and relationship building. It's in our nature to want to do that. That's a natural thing for women to do, whether it's because we're child rearing, whether it's just intrinsic in us, we want to connect. And so when you have that feeling, that gut feeling as a woman out there wanting to be a high performer, gosh, follow that. If somebody's talking to you and they're really sharing something with you, open up and talk to them for 5 minutes about it. It might be the difference between their great day and a bad day. And again, it's what you said. It's how you make them feel.
That is
it's
such
so
a great
important.
point. It's such a great point. And think about when, as women, sometimes we feel that we're at a disadvantage, right? Because we're not a bro. We can't go, have beers and play golf and drink with the buddies. But guess what? We do have what a guy doesn't have. And that's a by nature strong EI and EQ.
Yes.
That maybe you can pull on strengths that your male counterparts can't. It's an advantage. And it's something that you just need to listen to, that intuition, that feeling. So I love that.
Yeah.
So,
another thing I was going to say real quickly on that, remember when I said leaders have this high EI? I think another thing that really does, when you as a leader, and Cindy, you're a leader, you're an area director. I think that what you have when you're working with your people is a level of trust because you connect with them on such different levels. And I was listening to you talk to one of your coworkers the other day, and I was like, gosh, she's really connecting with them on a level that they needed to hear. It's going to be fine. We're going to get you through this. You're going to get to the end. I'm not saying that men don't do that, but you are like connecting with this person on a whole nother level. And I thought, wow, I would want to hear that. If I was a brand new employee or even somebody just struggling with a situation, to know that my leader has my back is such a big thing, right? It builds that level of trust that you don't build it any other way. So I think that's really important as well.
Well, thanks. And I will say just to clarify, there are some great male leaders out there that do have EI and EQ, but by nature, it is just a strength of women. It's just the way we're born. It's the way we're made. So let's pull that superpower.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to the third part that we believe is a really important part of having a strong EI and EQ, and that is self-regulation. And so what do we mean by that? We mean like really staying composed during an objection or challenging situation. Now, this, I think, is harder for females versus males.
I'm raising my hand right now.
It's true. We have the empathy strength side. Men have the self-regulation strength side.
Yes.
But guess what? When we know that, we just got to work harder to be better at our reactions.
Can I tell you a really interesting story? Okay, so, and this is totally like just happened. So we were sitting in church and we're going through, of all topics, anger. And I'm not joking you, Cindy. My husband's poking me and my kids are looking at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like looking around. Is everybody else seeing the same thing that is getting on? Like, does everybody know that I get angry? It's so bad. I'm like, oh my God. He's talking about your responsiveness to things. I will admit, I struggle with that. So I'm working on it. I'm really working on controlling that reaction, that immediate explosiveness or hard reaction to something, right? It happens a lot, unfortunately, to me. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one out there that will sometimes just react to something versus let me sit back. Let me think about this. Let me self-regulate. And yes, men do that very well.
Yes, they do. And Lisa, I just think it's hilarious. Your story just makes me laugh with your family. but it's also about self-awareness. So kudos to you for being aware of what it is. And then it's working on it. And I think that, this is where, again, a strength of women is, and actually even men, when there's a part of you that you realize you can better yourself, then you just need to focus on it.
Yeah.
So in other words, okay, let's say you're going into an account. How do you work on that? Because, we talk about these things, but what does it look like and how do we do that? So you're going into an account and you're expecting, this doctor's like all excited because they're going to get ready to, move forward with their product. And you walk in and then they're like, Lisa, this wasn't done, or we're not going to do this. Now so-and-so's here and it's not happening. And like you were literally ready to cross the finish line. It's that moment where, what do? Do you get angry? Do you just stop and take a breath? So it's the surprise moments that we're not expecting it that throw us off guard. So then for all of you listening, it's just knowing if this is the point where I know I'm going to lose it. What do? Find a cue to either calm yourself down. The easiest thing to do is take a breath because nobody can see it. But if that doesn't work, like what's a trigger to change what you're doing or remind yourself, hey, don't react. Stop for a minute. Count to 5. Soak in the situation. Don't let them see your face. Poker face, smile. I've said this before, but years and years and years ago, when I first started and, I was a nurse, I was completely new to sales. And yes, I grew up north and I talked with my hands. And I had a amazing first manager who was like, maybe it's best if you sit on your hands and that will remind you to listen.
Yeah. You've told me this.
So it's a silly cue, right? But it worked for me because I could feel my hands moving when I'm trying to say something. If I just sat on my hand, I'd listen better. So Lisa, if you're walking in and you're ready to just be a rocket and go off in anger, like what can you do? Make up something. Tap your thigh, take a deep breath. Like
take a deep breath.
A physical cue to change the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I don't usually blow up in front of my customers. Kidding. Unfortunately, it's usually my family. But taking a deep breath. I mean, for me, I'm so aware of every moment, of every reaction, every movement that I might have that somebody might judge me on. So I'm real careful with how I react around my customers, around, whatever, even if I'm angry. I'm super careful. I used to not be so much with for example, like an email, right? You get an email and you're like, oh, blood burns and you're like, boils, not burns. I would used to just shoot one off, right? Shoot an email back, fire it right back. And now I'm to the point where here's what I'll do. This is really silly, but it works. It totally works. I'll write the email and I'll draft it. I don't send it. It just goes into drafts and I just sit on it and I think about it for an hour or two. And by that point, now you're calmed down, right? Because I think it's 90 seconds. I don't know. Jay Shetty did a podcast, by the way. I do love his podcast, and did a podcast on controlling your emotions. And I think it's this 90 seconds or something like that. If you can just control your anger or your overwhelming emotion for 90 seconds, it'll subside. It'll calm down. Your brain now can actually function again and go, yeah, okay, maybe that's a little bit of an overreaction, Lisa. Let's chill out. You don't really need to say all that. Let's get smart and be strategic in how you're going to respond to it versus just emotional.
You just gave an excellent piece of advice. Never fire back an email or a text message out of reaction or anger, because that is forever written. That will get you. That is, I hope everybody out there listening does that and just give yourself.
I have learned.
Seriously. My goodness, that was great advice. Okay, so for our very fourth and last piece of EI is social skills. And social skills is about building rapport with others, adaptability with communication styles, and to see how they fit, because everybody communicates differently. I know if you're working with nurses, okay, let's think. Let's say that maybe you're working with nurses. They're mostly female. They're mostly empathetic and conversational. If you're working with high-level surgeons, you may have conversational, empathetic surgeons, but you also have surgeons that are very direct. You have surgeons that are very busy. So it's get to know your customer and understand, do they want a 2-word reply or do they need a paragraph? And these things are things to keep in mind, because when you communicate to one person one way, they want to receive a fast answer. Just get to the point. Where somebody else needs a little bit of softball first. When you use your EI or your EQ, you become that much better of a communicator when you fit to how they will receive what you're trying to say.
It's so important. And we've been talking about this, I feel like the entire time, making sure that you're paying attention and reading the cues of that customer. Some of us have customers that I already talked about this, but like some of them just don't want their time wasted. So when you're connecting with them, make sure you have a plan, make sure that you know the type of person that they are. You have a plan of what you're going to talk about and you go forward with that plan. If truly that person is in like a major rush or they are like, hey, this is an emergent situation, you got to be able to read that situation and say, this is not the time for me to have a sit down sales call with you. We're going to do that another time. It's great to see you, Dr. So-and-so. We'll catch up later or something like that. I mean, social skills are so important and they're building. You build those social skills. They usually don't happen overnight. It's a building process, but you get pretty good at it once you practice it every day and work at it. We're talking about if you guys are out there and you're thinking, well, I don't know if I have good social skills. Well, figure it out. Go into an account and work on it. Sit there and talk to the people that you usually don't talk to. Start practicing that. Go to church and talk to them. Go to the grocery store and talk to people. The more you connect with others, the better you will be in your job day to day. It's like a habit forming thing, right?
That's why it's our secret. Connection is the secret to EI and EQ. And when you take these 4 steps to building it, self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, and social skills, these all will help build a higher awareness of your EI or your EQ. And that brings you to the moment when you need it most to have a power play with your customer. So I will leave you all with a question that we asked again last week. I want every one of you to think of a customer right now where you can really pull on your emotional intelligence in a power play to move your business forward. Great selling, all of you. Thanks for listening to Secrets in Medical Device Sales.